work, I was pushing the wrong button. We figured out our problem from yesterday. Okay, so a couple things. First of all, thank you for coming back tonight. It's very good to see you all. And I've got so many good, fond, loving memories with some people here. I told you, Mike and Christy have been friends with us for a long time. Haley was in our wedding. I almost said that yesterday. It stayed inside. But Haley was in our wedding. I spent a long time in India with Bernard's dad. We've spent a lot of time together. I've told a couple people this, and you seemed a little bit surprised when I told you, but maybe Bernard is being a little modest, but Bernard and his family, his dad in India, they're big deals. I don't think you can probably understand the scale of how much Christianity in India is what it is because of Bernard's family. And so I know you will be modest about that, but you should definitely talk to him about it. It's interesting for sure. And then so many of you that I have already got to visit with, and I've enjoyed getting to know you. And it's the good thing about God's family. Like, it always happens this way that we just click immediately, and it's like we've known each other forever. So I've enjoyed my time here so far. Kyle and I go way back. Did you get your graduate stuff from Central when you were in Kansas City? Did you go there? Okay. Well, at least you lived in the same town where I was doing my work. But anyway, we've got some common bonds, and really more with your wife. Tony was one of our camp counselors for a long time. Top tier in every way. So I'm having a good time. So a couple things for you real quick. I was asked, let me do this one before I do the two things I was asked to do. Anything that I have is yours. I will share anything that I have. So the PowerPoints, my notes, I'll copy and paste them and send them to you, the videos, whatever it is that you need. My email's easy enough to remember. It's my name, Ryan Boyer, 5. There's 5 people in my family. 3/5 of us are here with you. Ryan Boyer 5 at Gmail. Just shoot me an email. Don't tell me after services because I'll forget. Shoot me an email and whatever you want. Like I'll give you whatever you want. But the thing is, 2 things for tomorrow. We're having a class tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock from 10 to 11:30. And somebody said, would you explain what we're doing in that class? So here's what's happening. I'm on my 4th Bible since I've been a Christian, and it started out in my first Bible. I would do my study, and I would, highlight things that I liked and write notes in the margin as I went. And then that Bible fell apart, and I had another Bible, and it's like, now I'm a preacher, and I start doing my stuff. And then I had another Bible and doing my stuff, and now I'm on Bible number 4. Somewhere around Bible number 2, though, I started to realize I keep marking and writing the exact same stuff. Like my mind works in this way so that I'm always attracted to the same kinds of things. Like I'm always attracted to structure. What's the main point? What are the subpoints? I'm always attracted to this is the question that I always ask when I teach a class. What is the main point of this text that we're reading? What's the main point? I want to know what that is. We always talk about words. We did it yesterday in our class and our sermon. Hey, look, the Bible wasn't written in English, and so here's a word that you need to, things like that. I'm always attracted to the same kind of stuff. And at some point I said, how about you just give those things a color? And so I call it highlighting, but it's not really about the highlighting. It's about thinking through the text, and I just want to share how I do it with you. And you can take it or leave it or modify it, however works best for you. But I feel strongly and passionate about that, and I love to share it. And so that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow from 10 to 11:30. And you can come and bring your colored pencils or just a pencil or nothing at all. Like, it doesn't matter. Just come and I'm going to show you what I do. And you can have that if you want. Another thing that I'm supposed to tell you is we are aware of the weather tomorrow night. I'm not, but I've been told that people are aware of the weather tomorrow night, and we're mindful. And so come and worship, and we'll get you out of here before. The plan is to be mindful and get you out of here before weather. So yes, people know about those things. Okay. I think that's everything that we need to talk about now. So we're talking about family, the church as a family. What does it mean for God's people together to be a family? So yesterday morning class time was, there is no metaphor so prominent in the scripture to describe our relationship with God and our relationship with one another more than family. We say Heavenly Father. That's a family word. We are God's children. Whenever I don't remember somebody's name, I say, good to see you, brother. We're brothers and sisters in the Lord. Those are family words. And so the first thing was just to talk about we're a family of God's people. The second thing, this was moving into our sermon yesterday morning. Okay, so if we're a family, what does that mean? It doesn't just mean that you have a heading on your website that says Cahaba Heights Church of Christ, a family of God's people. Lots of churches do have that sort of thing. It's not just a heading on your website. What does it mean to be a family? And so yesterday our first lesson was families are called to be unified. And it's not just because it's nice and pleasant to be unified when things are working the way that they're supposed to be. Unity is actually a matter of survival. Jesus was the one who said, a house that is divided against itself cannot stand. And so we're supposed to be a house, a family together. Unity, number one. Number two is what we're going to do tonight, and that is cooperation. Families work together. They cooperate together. Remember the Cape Buffalo? Everybody got together, shoulder to shoulder, heads looking in the same direction, cooperating together towards accomplishing a common goal, which happens to be the same common goal that we have, rescuing our people out of the hands of the devil. And so, cooperating together. This would be a good place to start on this one. Rivalry, competition, and working against a brother or sister's advantage would be as unnatural and as dysfunctional as for one hand to break what the other hand builds, for one foot to trip the other foot. What does it mean to be family? That we work and cooperate together towards a common goal. That's what we're talking about tonight. So open up your Bibles, please, to Galatians 5. Galatians 5 is going to be our first text. And while you're turning there, before you get there, I want to tell you about this. In 2018, the Winter Olympics were in South Korea. And my family, we don't really do TV in our house, not for like any sort of, there's just other things to do. We just don't do it. It's not our thing. But when the Olympics are on, the TV is on. And that's just it, like all the time. We love the Olympics. And it has worked out that my first two kids, was Olivia too? Did Olivia come in the cycle? I don't think so, yeah. But the first two did. The first two kids were born, one in the Summer Olympics and one in the Winter Olympics. And so we had our baby, we came home, and babies, like sleeping and babies don't go together. So when you're up in the very middle of the night, and the Olympics are on, that's great, you know, and it's like you form a special relationship with the sports that nobody's ever even heard of before, because your kids are awake in the middle of the night. And that's what happened here with Team Pursuit racing. So what it is you have two teams, and it's that short little track. Two teams and each team has three skaters. And the idea is we're going to skate and race as a team with 6 people out on the track at the same time. We're going to race as a team, and the idea is we're not all the same. You know, there's going to be a slowest person on the team. And this is why I start to love Team Pursuit racing, is because we're not just skating, it's like roller derby. Not completely like roller derby, but it's like, okay, if I'm faster than you, but in order to win this race, every single person has to get across the finish line. The fast people will get behind the slow people and shove them on skates, racing like with 6 people at the same time. And you can imagine it's chaos when this stuff happens, and everybody's doing all kinds of fun stuff, and it turns into a really fun thing. And you've never heard of it because Americans don't care about this stuff. But South Koreans, it turns out, care a lot about this stuff, and the Olympics were in South Korea. So something happened. This is actually a picture of the people I'm talking about right now. There's 3 people. The 2 in front were the actual 2 who should have been on the team. The third person behind was kind of like a politics thing. She shouldn't have been on the team, but she knew somebody, and it worked out that she got put on the team. And everybody was mad about this. And so the 2 skaters in the front decided, well, we're just going to make a point about that on an international scale. And they took off and left their slow teammate. And there's no benefit. Like, you don't win until your slow teammate makes it across the finish line. But they thought this is the time to make a point. And they did. And so after they did this, check these headlines out. And also look at the sources. This is not a small thing that happened when this happened. The South Koreans are furious after speed skaters hang their teammate out to dry. Remember, you don't care anything at all about this, but South Koreans care a lot about this. Here's the one that I want you to pay the most attention to. In the Washington Post, this is what it says. This is from the article. Koreans were so angered by the display that a petition was started asking that Kim and Park, that's the 2 in the front, asking that Kim and Park be banned from the national team because, quote, it is a clear national disgrace that such people with a personality problem are representing a country in the Olympics. And so that happened on Monday. By Wednesday, there was a national South Korean petition going around to make it so that Kim and Park could no longer skate for the national team ever again. And in 2 days, it had 500,000 signatures. And then eventually the petition was overwhelmed, and it's like, okay, you're not going to see these guys in the Olympics anymore. Because in this sport, the point is to cooperate together as a team to get everybody across the finish line. And maybe you can make a really cool point by leaving your slower person behind in the dust, but you don't win. We don't win. We don't win as a family of God's people unless we get everybody across the finish line. In Galatians chapter 5, you will recognize the works of the flesh starting in verse 19. When you're thinking about the works of the flesh, I think that this is right. There's 15 of them that are listed, 15 plus and things like these. But 15 works of the flesh that are listed. And I want you to notice something. I don't know if you've ever noticed this or not. So 15 works of the flesh, but 8 So let's do this. Let's call, of the 15, let's call some of them moral issues, like, for example, sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery. Let's call those moral things. I know that's not a perfect designation. Let's just do it for this right now. And then let's call the other. There's 8. There's 8 others that fall into a category that I'm going to call relational. And there's still moral problems, but let's just call them like relational, right? It's not sexual immorality. It's, I got a problem with you, and you got a problem with me. Look at what the 8 are. Enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions. And then you go back to some moral stuff after that. Think about that for 1 second. Have you ever thought about that? 8 out of 15 are don't act like this with one another, especially in a family context. And if you want to go back up to verse 13, I think that you can see a lot of the reason for this. For you were called to freedom, brothers, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another, for the whole law is fulfilled in one word, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then this is the passage. This is what I want you to see. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by each other. We're a family of God with the purpose of getting the entire family across the finish line. And what God is saying is, don't kill each other. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't do that with your own family at home. If we're a family together, don't bite and devour each other and kill each other with these 8 out of 15 works of the flesh. Let's all work together and be together to get everybody across the finish line. So, with that in mind, what I would like to do for the rest of our time tonight, which is not very much. I wish I hadn't looked at my watch. Then I didn't know what time it was. That would be better. Let's talk about some examples. This lesson is supposed to be practical examples of what it looks like to cooperate together as a family of God's people. And I've been given permission to this. Let's treat this like a class. This is, you're allowed to, I'll have different spots here where you can talk about some of this different stuff. And so, okay, so number 1, let's cooperate together as a family. Let's think about this one. This one's pretty easy. We can start out with some easy stuff that we know. How many of you have worked in your field that you work in? Or maybe you're retired. How many of you have worked in the field that you work in for, 25 years or more? Really raise your hand up. Let me see what we got here right now. Okay, 25 years or more in your field. Okay, go ahead and put your hand down. Now let me ask you this. And this is a serious question. For those of you who raised your hand, if one of our kids in this congregation, Landon, you can be our one. I know you're basically an adult, but you're like the closest that I know to being in this real situation. Landon said, I'm interested in doing the same thing that you've done for all of those years. And you've done it for 25 years or more of your career, right? For those of you who raised your hand, having done this thing for 25 years or more, how many of you would say to Landon, I'm not so sure that that's a good idea for a Christian? Would you raise your hand again if you would be in that situation? Nobody? Guess there were no police officers in this room. I did that for a couple years before preaching, and if Landon was like, hey, I want to be a police officer, I'm not saying you can't be a Christian and a police officer at the same time, but I had some trouble, and I would have something to say to you about that. Maybe I wouldn't say don't do it, but I would say there's definitely some things that we need to talk about. How about that? Would you say there's definitely some landmines that you need to know about being a Christian in this field? Would you do that? Anybody? Oh, you guys have made, oh, there we go. You're a preacher. What are you talking about? That's not allowed. You know, I've done these lessons in lots of different places, and um, there's always a lawyer, and there's always a lawyer who raises his hand, and he's always got something to say about this. There's always somebody in business who talks about ethics and morality and the temptation to cheat and not do right. So I'll just throw some of these up. Oops, sorry about that. I don't have them. Proverbs 11 and verse 14. As we go through, I'll just throw a couple things out here, reminders at you as we go. Where there is guidance, people falls, but in abundance of counselors, there's safety. Let me tell you what we don't do. You don't do this in your own house. Hey, Landon's about ready to, he's finishing up high school. He's about ready to leave home and to do something. And Mike and Christy are like, good luck. Hope you succeed. What's he doing? I don't know. It's his life. You know, best of luck to you as you go live your life, hands off. But you know, that's kind of sometimes how church families operate, because this is my life, this is my business, this is your life, here's your family, this is your business. There's a line, and we don't want to cross the line into each other's business. But that's not what family does. And this whole series of lessons is we're supposed to be a family. And we're supposed to be in each other's business. How about this one? How many of you have either done this or you've seen somebody do this? Somebody in your church family gets a promotion, but they have to move. And their new job that they're moving to is in middle of nowhere, Nebraska. I don't know. It's just an example. So I got to move here, and it's a really good opportunity for my career and for my family, and I'm going to move to middle of nowhere, Nebraska, and somewhere along the road it comes up, where are you going to go to church when you go there? And it's like, oh, there's not a church there. But we'll worship together as a family in our house. How many of you watch that? You've seen something like that. Anybody seen something like that among people? Did it end well? The time that you saw it? So if it were you or your kid, here comes your kid that you've devoted your entire life to. I got a really good opportunity to climb that ladder and have a really good job opportunity. But there's no church for me to worship with or church family to support me. But it's a really good job opportunity. Are you just going to not say anything to your family about that, to your kid? No, of course not. That's not what families do. So here's another one, if you're writing these down as we go. Proverbs 15:22. Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. Here's one for you. Every August, I get the same phone call. Every single August. I think this is true except for 1 year. It didn't happen 2 years ago. Becky and I keep track of these things. Hey Ryan, how's it going? Haven't talked in a long time. My kid is about ready to go to college, and he studied really hard for the last couple years, and he's devoted himself to this career path, and he's got all the grades, he's got all the credentials, he got accepted in this college. We did our college visit, we paid our tuition, we've registered for classes, we've bought all of our books. Mom has bought matching sheets and pillowcases, and lights and all the silly things that happen with college rooms and all that stuff. And it's all packed up, and we're leaving tomorrow morning. Do you happen to know of any churches nearby? You ever got that phone call? Do you see what's wrong with that phone call? Every single August I get it. And sometimes when I see the caller ID, I know what's coming and my stomach just turns over. And it's like, you are sending your child out in some of the most spiritually vulnerable times of their life. And you haven't even given any thought to their soul? Like what they're going to do about their soul? And then I used to get mad at the parents. And then I thought, wait a minute. Do you mean nobody in that church family asked the question until this point? Nobody brought it up? Hey, I'm leaving for college next week. And great, I'm really happy for you. Where are you going to go to church? Like, that seems like a reasonable conversation that we would be having with we've devoted, as a church family, we've devoted so much of our time into raising faithful kids. Those are questions that we should be talking about. Let's not do that. Proverbs 20 and verse 18, plans are established by counsel, by wise guidance, wage war. Proverbs 24 and verse 6, by wise guidance you can wage your war. In abundance of counselors there's victory. This is the thing that I want you to take away from this one. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I understand the sensitive nature of these conversations. Okay? I'm not ignorant. I'm not ignorant about that. I understand that you're going to have to walk real careful with some people. But what I'm advocating for in this lesson is that we act like a family of God's people and we start to get in each other's business. Get in each other's business a little more than is socially acceptable on a bigger scale, because this is exactly what you do with your own family, with your kids, with your wife, with your husband. If we're supposed to be a family, then we're supposed to be in each other's business. I care about you. I don't want you to be destroyed spiritually. Okay, that's all I got to say on that one. Anything else that you want to say about cooperating together, maybe experiences? What am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go with my life? Any examples that you want to talk about right now? Okay, let me give you another one. Maybe something will come up as we go and look at some of these things. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 6. This one, I know that a lot of these conversations are going to be hurtful. I always say this phrase, I'm not sorry for saying the things that I'm saying, but I don't ever take any pleasure in hurting people. And I know that some of these things are hurtful. And, I don't want you to feel like I'm standing up here really enjoying myself hurting you by talking about painful things. But the reality is, most of us who have done painful things would say, I don't ever want anybody else to have to go through that same experience. So, who am I going to marry? For each one of these, there's a pretty good scripture, and this is the one that goes with this one. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. What partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? What fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? What portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? And he goes all the way down to talk about some of these things. Chapter 7 and verse 1. Since we have these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from every defilement of body and spirit, bringing holiness to completion in the fear of God. And every time this happens, so let's just go ahead and get ahead of it right now. But Ryan, the context of this passage is not specifically talking about marriage. Okay, I got that. But if the concept doesn't at least apply to marriage, then I don't know what else it could possibly apply to. So let's just take the concept and what it applies to. And here's my question. This is where I want you to raise your hand again on this one. How many of you have watched a young couple, they dated and they fell in love, and you saw where things are going, and they got engaged, and everybody's saying, congratulations, this is going to be so awesome. And they're putting love emojis on Facebook, and you know these people, and you're sitting here and you're thinking about this, and you're thinking, I don't think that's a good idea. How many of you have seen that sort of a situation where you're like, I care about your soul, and this is not a good spiritual thing for you. We've seen it, right? So I won't ask you to do this part again. But for those of you who raised your hand, we've walked that road and we've all seen this situation. Don't really do this. I don't want you to really do this, but I will. How many of you have watched this situation and you knew exactly what was going to happen, and it was a bad idea, and it's not going to end well spiritually for these people? And so you have all of these feelings. For those of you who raised your hand, how many of you didn't say a word? And you just watched it happen and you never spoke up. You know, when I talk about that right now, my stomach actually turns over, because there's a handful of cases that I think about where I think to myself, it's not like I think that I probably could have done anything about it. I didn't even try. And, now I get to go to sleep at night knowing that I didn't even try. I didn't say anything about it. So Evelyn over here, we're concerned about her soul. We're going to spend, she's 2, right? Almost 2 years old. So we're going to spend, this church family, we're going to spend the next 16 years before she leaves home. We're going to devote 16 years of our collective life into raising a faithful child of God. And at some point, she's going to fall in love, and let's say that after 16 years of, well, I guess for some of you, you've been here that long, after 18 years of raising this child, she gets herself into one of these situations. How are you going to feel? How are you going to feel, Mom, about this if my response is, well, that's not really my business? Here's the cliff, and she's driving 100 miles an hour playing chicken with a train, with the cliff sort of thing. And I'm like, that's your soul, that's your family, not my soul, not my family, not my problem. How are you going to feel about that? That's not okay. That's not okay. And then you would say this to me. You're going to say, Ryan, you're going to go and say something to her and to the parents, and people are going to get mad about this. That's going to cause a fight. I know, but I care about your soul because we're family. I can't just let you do it and not say something about it. Right? Nothing like, are we together on this? Like this is, are you going to do this with your kids? Oh, that's your life, not mine. Hope it works out for your soul. Look at this one with me, Colossians 3. There's a word, I bet you know this word. You've probably heard this word. But sometimes there's Bible words, and I know what the word says in the Bible, and I say the word because I've read the Bible enough that it becomes a part of my speech. But guess what, though? Sometimes I say Bible words with no clue about what they mean. And I look it up in a dictionary, and I'm like, oh, I've been saying that word for 20 years. Had no idea, how to use it properly. So Colossians chapter 3 and verse 16 says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. And then this is what we're supposed to do with the word that dwells in us. It says, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms, hymns, spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. This is what we are supposed to be doing together as a family of God's people, as Christians. Teaching and admonishing one another. What does it mean to admonish another person? Maybe you could. I'd be happy for you. Like, could you stick a definition with that? Because if you asked me, okay, cool, Ryan, what does it mean to admonish? Well, it's not like a regular part of my vocabulary. I wrote it in my Bible. Here's a definition for you. Definition of admonish: to advise someone concerning the dangerous consequences concerning some action. To advise someone concerning the dangerous consequences concerning some action, comma, to warn. That's what the Bible says we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be advising each other about dangerous consequences and warning each other about actions of life and decisions and things like that. And you don't need a definition from a Bible lexicon to know that this is what you do as a parent with your kids and your own family. But that's what we're supposed to be doing as a family of God's people. How about this one? Look at Mark chapter 10. Let's go to Mark chapter 10 on this one. This is all this lesson is. The first part of the lesson is the introduction. Families cooperate. We're supposed to cooperate together and work together in accomplishing God's work. And this whole thing is just examples. And there's no way I can do all of the examples that are going to face each of us in life. But here's one. This is one that Becky and I have lived. So whenever this is true for preachers, but I bet it's true for lots of people in your career. There's a lot of us who have had to move away from our homes and our families to work. And do your families live close? So you got a baby, and like no nuclear immediate structure. Sorry, not a baby. That was very offensive for me to call you that. A young man. No nuclear structure, right, to do this. And especially it's true with the first-time moms. Your body is in distress. You're tired. I joke with our new moms all the time. It's just a joke. I'm like, how much sleep are you getting? You know, and we all have walked this road. But not only that, my body's in distress. I'm exhausted. My whole life has been turned upside down if I've had the very first kid. But also on top of that, none of us has any idea what in the world we're doing. Did you do that? It's time to leave the hospital and the doctors hand you this thing and you're like, what am I? And they're like, go home now. And it's like, what? I'm serious. And this happens. Some of you experienced seasoned moms will laugh about this, but it's kind of true. It's like your baby coughs, and it's like, and you're a parent, and you're like, do I need to go to the hospital, or is this normal? Because you don't know. You don't know these things. And before you tease about that sort of thing, that's what happened with Luke, with our first one. They let us bring him home jaundiced, and it was the opposite. Like a lot of new parents, oh no, my baby coughed, I need to go to the hospital. We did the opposite. Our baby wouldn't wake up. And so we called Becky's mom, and she said, take a wet rag and just irritate him and run it around his face. And we did, and he just laid there. And she goes, okay, that's not normal. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've never had one of these before. And so you don't know these things. And so we brought him home, and then the next day, or maybe that night, we took him back for a couple extra days. So here's one thing. I want you to think about this seriously. Mark chapter 10 and verse 29, Jesus said, I say to you, there is no one who has left house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or lands for my sake and for the gospel, who will not receive 100-fold. And hold on just a second. This is where you say, I know, Ryan, the promise of being a Christian is that I'm going to receive 100-fold on the other side whenever I go to heaven someday. This is highlighted in my Bible. I want you to see it very carefully. In verse 30 it says, who will not receive 100-fold, listen, now in this time, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and lands with persecutions, and in the age to come also eternal life. So here's the young mom situation. I just had a brand new baby, and I don't have a mom close by to help me with these things, to let me get one good night of sleep, to answer the questions that I don't know about this brand new baby, or maybe I'm overwhelmed or whatever. But guess what? When you're a part of God's family, I know that your mom is your mom, and she's not here. But when you're a part of God's family, you have 100 moms. And then the 100 different moms who are sitting here right now are going to do this. Yeah, I tried that once. I tried to offer some advice to one of the young moms one time about how to raise some kids. I know what you're doing right now because we've done this too. And it's like tricky. I got it. It's tricky. You got to walk carefully. You don't just barge through the room with this kind of stuff. But this is a part of what it means to be a family. And that we do. Hey, you know what? I noticed that whenever we're in church, your baby is acting out. Great. The noisier, the better. That's our future. Noisier, the better. Got it. But I was watching, and I noticed that your baby is arching his back and kicking and doing all this. Have you ever thought about just grabbing his hand and give him a little swat, you know? You've done that, and you see other people who don't know these things, and it's like, let's cooperate together. I know. It's like, have you ever tried? I have tried. And I know what this means, but what this lesson is what I would like. This is what I would like. Let's get a little bit uncomfortable in each other's business like family. And let's start breaking down some of these barriers that are not supposed to exist, because this is my life and that's your life and there's a line and we don't cross it. That's not what family is. That's not what family is. It's not how family operates. There's another one that I want to show you. Go to Titus chapter 2. In Titus chapter 2, I know I said that there was going to be time to talk, but I don't call my lessons sermons ever. I call them conversations. And one time a guy said to me, normally in a conversation I'm allowed to talk. And I was like, not with me. Sorry about that. So this is another important one. I hope that you'll pay close attention to this one. This is the way that the church is supposed to operate. Titus chapter 2, starting in verse 1, as for you, teach what accords with sound doctrine. Titus, I want you to teach this to your people. Verse 2, older men, this is what you do. You're to be sober-minded, dignified, self-controlled, sound in faith, love, steadfastness. Older women, this is what you do. Older women, listen up. Likewise, older women are to be reverent in behavior, not slanderers or slaves to much wine. But then look at this one. Older women, this is one of the things on your list. They are to teach what is good and so train the young women. Paul doesn't say to Titus, I think most people assume, that Titus was a young man himself. And I don't know what that means to be a young man, but I just assume he's a young man. And Paul doesn't say to Titus, hey Titus, why don't you go out there and start working with all the young ladies? He says, teach the older women and have the older women teach the young ladies. And this is what the older women teach the young ladies: to love their husbands and their children, to be self-controlled, pure, working at home, submissive to their husbands. Look at this list. These things, I know, I'm not trying to be irreverent about this stuff. This is the way that I talk. And so, let's do this. Let's talk the same language without being explicit about about some of these things, right? This is what we do. We talk and we go, we know what we're talking about here, right? So the first thing on the list, older ladies teach the younger ladies to love their husbands. You know, I've done this for long enough to see that young marriages often go through a period of distress, often, frequently. I would even use the word most of the time. Even Christian marriages, even godly, good marriages, there's a period of distress pretty early on where this is what happens. Like, we get married and we leave the wedding venue, and it's like 3 days later, and my wife is thinking to herself, what even is this? Like, I didn't have any idea what I signed up for. Men and women, it turns out, are really different. Like, we're very different in how we think and how we operate and how we regard matters of cleanliness. Like, we're different in every sort of way. And those of you who are older ladies, I'll look up on this one. I'll not make eye contact and say who I think the older ladies are. Those of you who are older ladies, it's your job to teach the younger ladies the things that you know about how to love your husband that they don't know yet. That's your job. And that's where we're like, we all know what we're talking about here and more. To love your children, to love their husbands, to love your children, to be self-controlled, to not be ruled and controlled by external forces, including your emotions, but to be in control of that stuff. All of these things, to be pure, to be working at home, how to be a productive member of your household, to be kind, submissive to your husband. And this last part is really important in a family context. The last part of verse 5 says, that the word of God not be reviled. That is, when one of our young ladies, or any of our people for that matter, old man, old woman, young man, young women, when anybody from the family goes out into the world and acts like a fool, it makes us all look dumb, bad. And so the idea is, let's teach each other how we're supposed to act so we don't go out and make things look bad. Make God look bad. Make our family look bad. We raise our kids together. Back in Mark chapter 10 and verse 30, in God's family, you have 100-fold. One of the things that we talked about was mothers. Another thing that we talked about was children. There's a man that I go to church with named Bob Kyle, and I love this guy. Bob has raised 3 kids. He's got grandkids. They're all gone. They don't go to church with us. They're all gone. Every time Bob gets up to pray, he stands up behind the microphone and he almost cries every time he prays because he prays very passionately. And every single time he prays for our kids. God, help us to raise our kids to love you and serve you. And I love it. I get goosebumps every time that this man, I'm not related to him by blood. You know, this man looks out at the congregation and he says, these are our children. We're going to raise them together as a family of God's people. Look at Deuteronomy 21. I like Deuteronomy 21. It looks like it's probably about time for me to wrap this up, so I'll maybe only just do this one and maybe refer to another one real quick. Deuteronomy 21, verses 18 through 21. I think this is such a neat passage, and I think that it's a neat passage, especially if you consider it from another angle that maybe you've not considered it from before. Starting in verse 18. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, will not listen to them, Then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of the city at the gate of the place where he lives. And they shall say to the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear and fear. So, this is, I think that we could tease a lot about this verse. We could have a good time with this verse. And especially it says things like this. It says, if the kid is having some problems, verse 19, it says, his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of the city. And it's like, I know what that looks like, to take hold of your kid and we're going to go see somebody about this, But the thing that I love about God's plan and what you see from this passage, can you imagine this situation where there are parents, maybe this kid is old, maybe he's the first kid. There's some things about he's a drunken and a glutton. So I'm not thinking we're talking about a 5-year-old here. So they've got this kid. I don't know what to do with this kid. And you're at the very end of your rope, and you're ready to stone this kid. Either figuratively or actually, you're at the end of your rope. I'm done, and I don't know what else to do about this. And I'll tell you, but you can judge me however much you want. But I've talked with some of you about this as we talk about our family. My son is not easy. He's such a good kid right now. I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of my son at this point. I feel like I swell up with pride when I think about my son and where my son is right now. And I say that to mitigate what I'm about to tell you. Starting in 6th grade, he was tough. He was a hard kid. And there were times when I said to Becky, I actually said, I don't know what to do. He can figure it out himself. I was really ready to just be done with this kid. And so in Deuteronomy 21, you don't know what's going on. You take your kid and it's like, I don't know what to do. I'm ready to stone this kid or be done with him or whatever. Can you imagine a scenario where it says you take him to the elders of the city? Can you imagine a scenario where the elders of the city say to you, you know what? I had a kid like that too. And how about this? Before we start throwing rocks, let's try this first. I can imagine that. And the point of what we're talking about here is parents, in Deuteronomy 21, parents do not single-handedly have control over the life of their kids. It's a community effort. And so elders, help. That's what I'm saying. Help us. Help each other. Sometimes we need help and we don't know what to do. Working through disagreements in Matthew chapter 18. I won't read these, but I'll give you the passages if you want. In Matthew chapter 18 and verses, I think it's like 15 through 18. If somebody sins, you go to that person and talk about it. And if that doesn't work, then you take other people. And that's the part that this is getting serious. If you've lived this, then you know that this is true. I'm going to take a couple witnesses with me. That's not a lynch mob. That's, hey, come and help me. We want to rescue this guy's soul. Not, I'm collecting my team. Let's go get him. No. And then, and if that doesn't work, then you take it to the church. And that is not, then he's a Gentile and tax collector. Taking it to the church is, all right, family, activate. We all need to try this to save this guy's soul. And so this is a family effort. We try and work through stuff. In 1 Corinthians 6, there's lawsuits happening among the Christians at Corinth. And one of the things that Paul says to the Corinthians is there nobody there who can help you walk through this? together. Same thing happens with the Philippians. When Paul writes to the Philippians, there's these two women, Euodia and Syntyche. Apparently they're having problems with each other. And Paul writes and he says, hey, help them out. Sometimes we need help working through some issues. And again, like this is what's in my head as I talk to you about this. I'm not naive or ignorant, because you're sitting there and you're thinking, yeah, I tried that and it didn't work. But still, let's try. That's what family does. Let's not just hand over our people to the devil without effort, but rather look around right now, this church family, and even those people who are not here right now, you look around and it's like, here is our team, our family, and the goal in this room right now, you look around and you make eye contact with every single person. The goal is to get every single person across the finish line. And we're not done until that has been accomplished. So, we're not going to have an invitation song, and there's not a period of invitation where I say, if you want to become a Christian, come forward as we stand and sing. But I will tell you this. If you're sitting there right now and you're thinking, I wish my family was like that. I wish I had a family like that. You can have a family like that. I know enough about you all to know that you're listening to some of these things and you're thinking, yeah, this is how family works. This is how we operate. We can tweak it and do some things better, but this is how this family operates. If you're thinking, I want to be a part of something like that, then you do it by coming to be born again as a child of God through Jesus Christ. And when you are a child of the Father and I am a child of the Father, that makes us brothers and sisters with one another. And then we live and walk and operate together as a family of God's people. And so if you want to talk about that, you can talk with me about it. I can point you to somebody in this congregation to talk about that. But if you want to be a Christian tonight, or you want to start talking about what it takes to be a Christian, then I hope that you will do that. Thank you very much for your attention tonight. I would normally say attention and participation, but I don't really give you a chance for that. But thank you tonight.